Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming out. My name is Chris Furnari. I'm the editor of Brewbound.com. This is Brew Talks, CBC Special Edition. Thank you, guys. This is pretty overwhelming and pretty humbling to see a lot of familiar faces here. So thank you guys for coming out to support. A round of applause for everyone that showed up tonight or this afternoon. We usually do these in the evening. For those that are familiar with Brewbound, we're an industry trade publication covering the craft beer space. We go all around the country hosting these Brew Talks meetups. We've done a few of them already this year, and the folks from 10 Barrel reached out to us and said, hey, why don't we do something during CBC? So we said, sure, let's see it through and see if we can make it happen. I guess we got a couple hundred people to show up and got a line out the door. We're also live streaming this across the web, so there's presumably one or maybe two people tuning in from other parts of the country, hopefully. It's all for a good cause today. We raised $2,400 so far for the Oregon Health and Science University's Knight Center for cancer research. So big round of applause for doing that. So before we jump into things today and I call up our first speaker, I did just want to take a brief moment to recognize a few folks who helped make this whole thing possible. First, Adam Warrington at Anheuser-Busch has been tremendous in helping get the speakers lined up, and I truly couldn't have done this without him. So I don't know, Adam, wherever you are, thank you for assisting me in putting this together. There he is. And then also, to 10 Barrel, just for pouring beers for everyone today and the staff here. I know they're working extra hard for us, and we truly couldn't do it without them. The entire Brewbound team that's floating around, you met a couple of them when you checked in. Both the Johns, both the Matts, Ashley, Josh, Dave. I hope I'm not forgetting one. People at the back in Boston where we're based. So thank you to the team. Cheers. And of course, our sponsors. We got to pay the bills, So all of our sponsors: Pubkeg, Vicinity Brew, Rock 10, Crohn's, Boston Capital Leasing, DWS, Farley Turner, and Maine. These guys help us go around the country and put these on. We have a whole staff that we got to fly around, and gear and camera equipment and everything else. So without their support, we actually just wouldn't even be able to get here. So thank you to them. And with that, I'll call up our first speaker, Mr. Joe Bisacca from Elysian Brewing. Come on down, sir. Welcome.
Good to see you.
So Joe was telling me that he was in the mosh pit last night.
Yeah, a little rough, sorry.
So I won't beat you up too much.
Thank you.
But I'm sure everyone is looking at the program and they're saying, I thought Dick was supposed to be here. Unfortunately, Dick couldn't make it tonight. And truth be told, I mean, I know you guys probably have your differences at this point, but I don't think we could have fit an octagon in here anyways. So anyways, now that I've addressed it head on, let's move forward. So the deal closed earlier this month?
Yes, April 1st.
I know, so it's no April Fool's joke.
Exactly, right.
So it closed. What's been the biggest change, just kind of over the last 3 months since the deal was announced and now that it's closed?
I think the transaction closing, that's paperwork in the back office, so everything else sort of files in afterwards. So at this point, not a whole lot. I took some time to go back home to see family, and I think the best thing with that is I didn't have to worry about transferring money for payroll and sign checks and things, right? It was kind of nice to not have to do the minutia, and worry about those things. But at this point, it's business as usual. There's no real change at all.
Right.
I think we're looking at improving things at the plant, but you can't just jump in there and do it. You got to think about what you want to do. What we want to add in there for capacity and for ability to keep innovation going forward. So that's being mapped out now, and we're really in the driver's seat for that, which is one of the reasons why it's probably taking a little longer.
Right.
But yeah, I think at this point, you look at the places and there's not a big change at all.
Yeah,
you don't really see much.
And I know we're gonna talk a little bit about that with the other brands later.
Sure.
So let's kind of start from the beginning. I guess walk us through your time, sort of starting Elysian and kind of all the way up to
starting Elysian forward.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the Cliff's Notes version, I guess.
Does everybody have a beer?
Yeah. But all the way up until the time that you guys,
Sure.
First had a thought where you were like, okay, let's look at our options, let's see what's out there. What was that time like? And talk to me a little bit about the point that you got to where you said, okay, let's see it.
I think for us, we went into it because it was something that we love, that we're passionate about. I was a home brewer. Dick was working over at Pike Place Brewery. Dave was he was working for Rogue at that point, selling beer. And we loved the process. I was in commercial banking and I hated it. And so we wanted to, do this on our own, and it made some sense. We each had the skill set coming in that would work. And when you're doing that, I don't think you have an idea of what succession looks like. You don't have an idea of where you're going to go with this 20 years down the road. You're not thinking about that. You're worried about, I hope I have enough money to open up.
Right.
And I hope when we open, people are going to come in and actually have a beer, and they're going to like us. So, I think we had thought about, hey, we're getting a little older, want to do some things. We keep on expanding and growing, which is great, but it's a lot of work. There's a point when you want to start thinking, I want to kick back a little bit. For me, it was I want to kick back a little bit, but I want to keep doing what I love doing. I like working with the brand. I like working with the beers. I don't want to lose that.
Right.
And so you try to maybe, at some point, I think over the past 5 years, we've rudimentarily talked about, what are the options out there? You could do an ESOP, selling to your employees, and sometimes that works, sometimes not. You have to have a certain critical mass. With the restaurant chain, the ESOP kind of falls apart quick, because those are very transient employees and it's hard to encompass them. When you go to private equity firms, great, well, you're along for the ride for 3 to 5 years, but then they're going to sell it and you don't know where that's going to go.
Sure. How about the point, just getting to that conversation? I mean, was there a moment for you or for all the founders that you said, all right, we can't go at this alone, we need to find somebody else to help us out?
Usually when the toilet was overflowing and you're plunging it and you're going, how are we going to get out of this thing, But I mean, that point when we came up to it, it's not a light switch. It's a dimmer switch. And it's little bits and pieces and it's little conversations over a period of time, and it slowly goes more and more and more. And then you go, yeah, we should look into something like this. And, we exercised, over the years, kind of poking around at different options on stuff. Even like, can we change the model of Elysian into something that would dividend out, as opposed to just recycling the money back into new tanks and stuff, so that we can have money to live on if we didn't want to work. If one or more of us wanted to actually leave. And, that's a tough model too. And I think during that whole process, when we were going through it, some people from Anheuser-Busch sort of, approached conversationally at best, and it was just real low-key, mellow. And
so this is about a year ago, or?
Yeah, about a year ago. And it was, it's never, we'd seen these guys around before, and fine, have a couple of beers with them. And, I think we just started the conversation, and again, it's, there's no light switch, it's a dimmer switch. And so I got asked at one point, at what point did you decide you wanted to sign on the dotted line? And I just 3 days before I signed on the dotted line.
Wow.
It was literally 3 days before we signed. You do all the due diligence, you do all the minutia work, and you get caught up in that. But the decision doesn't come until you have a comfort level that it's going to be good. I think of stewardship of the brand. I think of customers that we have, doing right by them, because they're the ones that supported us and kept us in business for all these years. I think of my staff more than anything else. Are they in a good home? Are they going to be treated well? What do their benefits look like? Our contribution to 401k was they get a six-pack. So it wasn't much.
Right.
So so how does that look? Huh?
Getting more professional then, in a way.
Yeah, and so who's going to take this package that we created and treat it the best?
Right.
And then I don't want to deal with the day-to-day junk anymore, but I want to be involved in it. So how does that model work? How does that model work where I can relax a little bit, but I can be involved in innovation, I can be involved in the brand development and the graphics. You know, how could I still do both of these things? Where does that lie?
Right.
And that's a tough thing. We talked with private equity firms. While we were talking with Anheuser-Busch, we talked with some industry people. You know, really, you know, at the end of the day, the AB model sort of answered those questions for me. I think, you know, Dave was answered questions differently than I was, and Dick was answered questions differently as well. So each of us have our own views,
right?
You know, in terms of how that whole thing worked. But for me, answering those three questions were sort of the biggest piece.
Right. So, you know, we know that Dick, you know, he's been pretty vocal and said he didn't want to sell to Anheuser-Busch.
Right.
At one point, you know, he sort of told us that the relationship between, I guess, all the founding partners, you, Dick, and Dave, was sort of contentious right from the start of these conversations with Anheuser-Busch.
Right.
He said it was dysfunctional. I guess, you know, looking at this situation after the fact, and if you were to offer some advice to other brewery founders that have multiple partners, you know, what would you say to them if the question ever comes up, you know, hey, we disagree, how do we move forward to get a deal done? For us, it's a little bit of a twist on that. We're a C Corp, so we have shareholders, we have board of directors. There's 5 people on the board. 3 of us are on, and then there's 2 alternate investors that are on there. We look at it as when you get approached, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders to vet the thing. Right. And the other thing that I also believe is you should also always talk to people, because you don't know. Right.
You know, if your gut feeling is these guys are bad, you don't want to deal with them, whatever like that, you might miss something that might be good.
Right.
And I think you have an obligation to yourself, to your business, and obviously to shareholders for that reason, to actually just go through the discussion. Like I said, I made the decision 3 days before we signed, because I had my questions answered. I knew what the structure was like. I talked with the guys at Goose. I talked with, you know, folks at 10 Barrel. I got a feeling for what that road's like. Goose was great because you get to look at what it's like 4 years out.
Right.
You know, and you know, that process, when somebody approaches you and asks you, I'd say, you know, just go through the steps. You don't have to say yes. You can sign letters of intent, you can sign non-disclosure agreements. Those are fine. They're not binding. And you can leave at any point in time, but I think you should just hear people out.
But I feel like at the end of the day, there was probably, maybe I'm just guessing at this, but you guys all had to sit around the table and answer some questions amongst yourselves.
We did. Yes.
So
quite a few times.
Yeah. So when you have that sort of contentious relationship, right, how do you navigate the waters so that it's, you know, it doesn't devolve, I guess, to the point where
it's going to devolve at some point, right? And so there is a difference of opinion, and you know, on that board, it wasn't really like Dick over here and us over here. It was 4 or 5 pockets. You know, we each had a different spin on it. We each had a different idea of how the whole thing was looking to us, and right, whether it was something we wanted to do. So I think it's tough. It's cathartic. You go through it. It hurts. It's painful. You know, if you have one person that's very critical of the opportunity that you have, makes you think about it. Man, is this really the right thing? You know, should we really do this? And it makes you want to vet things a little bit more. I think that process, even though it's painful, you want to go through because it makes the decision more valid and better in the end.
Right.
I think, you know, even in terms of how everything is structured out.
Did you ultimately just have to trust your gut?
No, you want empirical data. You know, you want to see what's going to happen, you know, and it was having the opportunity to meet some of the hierarchy at ABI. We had a chance to have conversations with Carlos Brito. Felipe Spiegel he's here now. You know, we talk with these guys on a regular basis. We hear from them where their vision's going, and then when they, you know, words are kind of cheap. You want to see what actions are, so you look at some things that they were doing in some segments of the market around there that sort of validate what they were saying.
Right.
I think at the end of the day.
So, you know, we know that Dick has said there were some options that could have been more completely explored. And you sort of touched on them earlier. But what kind of potential buyers did you talk to, and what did and didn't you like about those buyers? You know, PE folks, family office.
I could speak more to the private equity side because that's what I did. I chased, and when we interviewed and ran through 5 different PE firms. And there's all different types of PE firms out there. There's some good ones, there's some bad ones, they're all different lengths. The private equity model, you're going to buy it, you're going to invest it, you're going to try to grow it up, and then it's going to be a sale in 3 to 5 years, maybe 8 years on the outside. But it's to fulfill an end that it's going to be sold. Well, that sale might be Anheuser-Busch, that sale might be Kraft Foods, it might be General Foods, might be another PE firm. You don't know where that's going to go.
Right.
It could also go to public stock. I think public stock, 250,000 barrel and up is kind of where you got to be to really start that ball rolling. But it's when you're interviewing and you're going along, it's a tough thing because you have, in all the meetings, you got about a dozen hours that you're really face to face with these guys. And if you sign on that, now I'm along for the ride with them. They're in the leadership role. I have equity, but they own most of the business, and I'm in it. I don't get anything for the next 3 to 5 years. So it's like, it's speed dating.
Sure.
Speed marriage. You're getting married instantly, and you don't know where that's going to go.
Right. So it's like going to Vegas.
It's like going to Vegas.
Oh.
And so
I can't say either way. But.
Yeah, I know it is. It's a tough road, and I think it's valid for some breweries. I think for the right PE firm and the right brewery, the relationship could really work well. My biggest concern, you would personally do financially very well with it. Concern was for staff. My concern was for legacy of the brand, that I was, worried about, is the brand going to be devalued? Are we going to be undercutting pricing to get the CE count up high so that they can sell it for more? Are we going to have the benefit structure and the employment structure that's good for our staff? Those questions aren't answered fully.
Why don't you have those same concerns with Anheuser-Busch?
I did. Looked at them and vetted them and looked at their salary rates and looked where things were, looked what their 401k program is, look what their health insurance looks like, look what the opportunity for training is. If an employee wants to go from Elysian to go work at Goose, they're an internal hire at that point. If they want to go work for Leffa, they can go work for Leffa for a few years. So it's like, look at the staff in terms of resume building for them, furthering their career, what kind of opportunities exist in that realm, and they're pretty good.
Right.
And those are transparent. You can see them. Baby's easy because they exist, and you could see how things work. You could see what the people at Goose have done, and that resonated with us.
Right.
A little bit. I think for us, and then even go further. Access to the raw materials. They have a hop farm.
Right.
We can grow some stuff, So there's layers to it, I think, that go out.
So you guys all were in charge of looking at different potential buyers, and everybody came back to the table and said, here's what we found, here's what we've learned, here's what we've discovered. Ultimately, I guess, how did you guys arrive at the decision to sell to Anheuser-Busch over all those options, and how were you able to convince the other voting shareholders that this was the best choice?
I think the board did that as a whole. So we as a board talked, try not to have sort of a personal voice in there. You want to have sort of a collective voice. So, as I was getting information from PE firms, we would gather them up, and then I would present what this firm is looking at, right? And then the next firm, and the next firm. And then, you go through that exercise, and I think, you whittle some out, you come down to your top 2 and your 3 and what's going to make the most sense. Also with a caveat at any point in time, are we sure we want to sell?
Right.
Right? For us, we were hitting a capacity limit at the plant. We can do about 120,000 barrels. We're hitting that now. And it's a 60-barrel brew house, so that's kind of where I'm at. And I can't, I'm kind of shoehorned in geographically to where I am. So to really go further, I'm selling that plant and I'm investing $25 million in a new production facility that can do 500,000 barrels. And it's like, Jesus, do I want to do that? That's a lot of work.
Right.
That's a lot. That's a massive undertaking. Where am I going to get $25 million from? You know, so you look at that point, we hit this wall. To go to the next step takes this next undertaking that's the biggest undertaking ever that we've ever done. Do we want to do that? Is that something that we want to go down solo?
Right. And ultimately the board decided, no, we need help. We need a financial partner.
We need help. We need a financial partner. And also, you know, we've been in it 20 years. It wasn't like we, you know, were in it for a few years and decided just to dump it and go. We've been doing this since, you know, 96.
Right.
We started working on it in 95. So, you know, it's been a long road. It's been a great road. I'm continuing on the road. I'm staying with him. But it, you know, you hit that point. I think, you know, that next piece looked a little daunting, I think, for us.
Right. Why have you decided to stay with him?
Reasons I mentioned earlier, you know. I want to steward our employees through the whole process. I want to make sure that we do right by our, you know, customer base that we have, that the beers continue to be what they've been, that we increase innovation that we've done, that we go out further with it. Selfishly, it's like I like the idea of doing the things that were fun to me without having to do all the other crap, you know. And it was I don't want to plunge any more toilets, you know.
Right.
I don't want to have to do that stuff.
Well, and it seems like it's you know, certainly a good situation for you to be involved in an organization like Anheuser-Busch that, you know, like you've said, has the access to capital, has the access to the raw ingredients, allows you to kind of move about freely if you choose, you know, if that's something you'd want to explore. But there are other strategic partners out there. You know, there's some in the room. You know, there's Craft Brew Alliance, Duvel. There's international strategic partners that are getting involved here now. Was there something that you didn't like about those options as a strategic versus Anheuser-Busch?
I think you cluster some of the big breweries in one lump a little bit to some extent. Is that a route that we want to go down? I also think that there's some hesitancy at some point. You know, you want to see what's out there, but you can't just fire sale it out there. You know, you can't have it get out early that you're trying to sell. Right. You know, you're going to demoralize everybody. Everything's a big problem. It's tough. Like when we made the announcement the morning, there's no other way to do it other than to bring everybody in one morning and drop a bomb. You can't do it any other way, because if it comes any earlier, there's too much dysfunction and issues that go on. You have to drop the bomb and then spend the next couple of weeks with your staff, with your customers, be face to face, be present. And I think the thought of shopping it too far, you risk that coming out earlier. So I think you've got to be satisfied with a cluster that you're going to do, and go with that. Right.
So, you know, one of the questions I had here for you, and we've touched on it, you know, the access to capital and stuff like that. Branding, sales, marketing expertise is literally a phone call away. If you guys, you know, don't know how to do something, it seems like you can just find somebody who may have been there before, really draw on the expertise of Anheuser-Busch. How much of that was a motivating factor to get the deal done? It seems like, you know, as quickly as you did.
A bigger motivating factor was that they said, we want you to keep doing it. We want you to do what you do. We don't want to tell you what to do. So, you know, in a lot of the transition, once we announced to when we closed, you know, my staff and myself started finding out that, you know, unless you really ask these guys for something, they're not going to poke you. You know, they want to let you do your thing. They can execute sales and creating the brand and the infrastructure and the capacity. They can do that great. It's coming up with the brand and the image and who we are and what we are. And if you start doing that out of a central office for 10 Barrel and Elysian and Goose and everybody else, you homogenize all those brands and you sort of lose effectiveness of what's there. Right. So it is, to a fault, you guys have to do that, you know? So we got charged with, you know, for assistance, for events, for outside things, you should hire an outside marketing firm to help you as you need. And so we go, okay, well, how do we do that? And they go, well, you go find them, you know? and so, you know, we'll go ahead and pay for them, but you guys go find them, whoever you feel is going to work well to help you pull these things off. But you do the labels, you do the branding, you do the things the same way you've done.
Right.
You want to change that. And to me, that's what I'm looking for.
Right.
Right. I want to keep that.
So there's been a lot, I guess, written about, discussed that you guys didn't really have, and you said it earlier, that you guys didn't really have a succession plan.
No.
And a lot of I think brewery businesses, they don't start with the idea of selling, and that's not something that is even a thought when you're just getting off the ground. But I mean, kind of looking back and reflecting on your whole process now. How important would you say it is to consider that succession plan perhaps a bit earlier than most businesses are?
Earlier is better. I think I would be hesitant to say when you're starting your business you need to think about succession plans, because then it's too much. Concentrate on what you're doing, get the thing open and running rate, create your brand. But there's a point, and it's different for everybody, right? You may want your succession plan earlier when you're younger to go do some things. You may want to go into a different industry. I mean, I think that's a real personal feeling, but I do think, I mean, for us, I think that whole succession plan conversation is about a 5-year period. From having a beer and mentioning it once,
right,
to actually going through due diligence and signing things.
Well, I mean, and clearly it's the topic du jour right now. There's so many deals happening that I think people are thinking about it probably already from an earlier stage, but maybe they just don't know how to think about it. What would be some advice for somebody that is sort of new to thinking about, okay, where do I want to be? I mean, do you have to think about the distribution piece? You have to think about the finance piece. I mean, there's a lot of different factors.
This is just, that's an enormous chunk. I think the concern, one of the concerns that I had for kind of almost trying to push things along a little bit is there's a lot of breweries out there. And there's a lot of breweries that are getting seasoned and getting developed, and a lot of breweries are hitting that range where succession becomes something that's cognizant in their minds. And what the hell happens if like 150 of them want to go at once? What happens to the spread of the marketplace and the access to where these are going to go?
Right.
AB is not going to buy 100 brands. You get like 6 or 8 maybe tops. It's not going to be a huge pool, and then that's kind of done.
Right.
And Duvel may come in and do some things, and somebody else may come in. But
sure.
It's at that point, it's that well sort of starts to run dry a little bit, and what you're left with is sort of the less desirable avenues that are out there. So I think it's a good thing to think about, and a good thing to figure timing. There's a lot of breweries in planning.
So there was an eagerness to sell for you guys because of that?
Eager is a strong word. I think an awareness that's out there.
Okay. Right? So, you sold to Anheuser-Busch. A lot has been made about their intentions in the craft beer space. You can go talk to some of the more vocal, small, independent guys, and they'll tell you their thoughts pretty candidly. And we'll certainly be talking about that in a bit. But do you believe they have the best intentions for craft? And I guess from your perspective, why do they want to be involved in the craft beer space?
You got to look at what's going on, not just in the marketplace in the U.S., but also internationally. Italy has, I don't know how many 100 craft breweries now. Italy had Peroni and Moretti, and that was it, right? And now they're exploding and going. I saw a friend of mine, and he's in India working with craft breweries. It's like, these things are blowing up all over, and the landscape of beer drinking worldwide is starting to change. Well, that's on InBev's radar. They're worldwide. So you have a shift, and it's not just a flavoring in a beer. It's not a Bartles and James wine cooler. It's not a cider. It's got more depth than that. Craft beer is a fundamental change, I think. And they smartly realize that, and they realize that within the talent pool that they have, within the breweries that they haven't exercised those skills, and they need to bring in some skill to lead the way to do these things, right? We're not there for capacity. You know, 100,000 barrel brewery a year doesn't really register on their radar. We don't sell enough beer.
Right.
But as a brand development resource, that's where that value is, you know.
So,
and that has a lot of influence in where they go.
Exactly. Well, and I guess what does that mean ultimately for some of their other brands in your mind? I mean, clearly Elysian is one thing. You know, they have a stable of craft brands now. They have, you know, I guess crafty brands, if you want to call them that.
I think those are a lot of leftovers from prior. But
Sure. But, you know, they're certainly diversified. Let's say that.
Sure.
And, you know, you sort of just admitted that they brought us in for our skills and our expertise to help them learn about, you know, what this whole craft thing is about. Does that ever worry you about what might happen down the road as they start to learn these skills and you know, become more efficient at executing behind them?
Their lead guy that did recipes for them was with them for like 35, 40 years. The guy was there for ages. I was in Las Vegas at the wholesaler convention for all the AB wholesalers, and it was his sort of farewell, you know, moment that he had. They didn't get rid of him because he figured some things out and finished it, you know. And I think that's the same thing with us. Now, I will tell you, like, if we stop being innovative, if we don't do what we're there for, sure, we're not relevant, right? But that's what we're there for, and that's our sweet spot. That's what we love.
Right.
So I think that it's some of that burden's on us to stay relevant and to lead. You know, it's leading them too. It's, you know, showing them that, you know, we need to do these things this way. We need to pay attention to stuff this. They're taking those steps. They're making the investments, and that was the thing that was, you know, you see sort of after the deal was announced and inked. But you know, I'm seeing more and more of that commitment and follow through to make this all work.
Right. A lot of people have the opinion that they just don't have the best intentions, that they're going to ruin the whole craft market, they're going to depress pricing and you know, roll kegs down the street for free and things like that. You told me when we spoke a few months ago that it's your job to prove everyone wrong.
Correct.
So how do you plan to do that?
I have to keep them focused. You know, I have to have conversations. I have to be passionate about it. I have to win them over that this is the right path to actually go. You know, I always believed with craft beer, make something of quality, make something innovative, make it consistent, make it the best you can do, and you should charge for it. You should charge reasonable price.
Right.
I don't think you should undercut. And you know, our pricing hasn't changed. Our pricing model hasn't changed. There's no plans for any of those to change. Access to market is a different piece to that. You know, I think you have pricing over here and you have access to market. We aligned with the Anheuser-Busch network 6 years ago. And I did it because they have a better advantage in a lot of stores, you know, and that's helped get our brand to where it was. That battle on the shelves, you know, draft handles rotate. Everybody knows draft handles rotate. But the battle for SKUs on the shelves is getting fierce.
Right.
The grocery stores are not going to expand a lot of real estate. That's not going to happen. They got what they got. You're not going to displace, you know, chips and salsa, and you're not going to displace the other things that they have. You looked at six-packs a few years ago, broad-faced. You look at six-packs now, and they're on end. You know, that space is shrinking like crazy, and there's a lot of breweries trying to get in that business and get in that market. That's tough.
Right.
You know, I do have a little better access to that, and I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, I think that's something that, you know, if you're upset that I have that access, is because you probably don't. And I'm not trying to be harsh about that, but it's like, you know, in business, you need to try to get the best access that you can.
Sure.
And you know, we're 65, 70% packaged. So that SKU management for us is the single biggest thing that we do. And that's kind of the general range you're in, 60-40, 65-35, you know, somewhere in there.
So that was obviously a big piece of...
We were already with them, so that didn't change.
Right. Well, I'd like to open it up just for a few minutes to audience questions. I know we have probably a microphone we can pass around back there, but this event is just as much yours as anything. So if anyone has any questions, just raise your hand. Joe's here for another few minutes, so anything that's on your mind, ask him. Does anyone have any questions? Any burning questions?
Joe,
we got a couple of. Sure. Oh, we got one in the back. And
Joe,
then two up here.
Tony Forder, Ale Street News.
Yeah.
Did the fact that the previous purchases of Anheuser-Busch, the Goose Island, Blue Point, 10 Barrel, did that factor into your decision?
Totally. Yeah, it was the ability to see what they've done prior. Goose was probably the best idea of sort of, taking a brewery that was close to the same size we were at and what they've allowed them to do. You go over Goose and they have a 140,000 square foot barrel warehouse. They're doing incredible fun things. They're doing, the sour program and the barrel aging program is off the hook. And it's not necessarily profitable. It's fun, and they're allowed to do that. And it's like, God, I want to do that. A lot of times we can do little bits and pieces of experimentation when we have a little extra cash, but you can't do that with everything. And to be freed up to really hone in on what we love, I think that was big, and that was seeing what those other breweries did. 10 Barrel, I would like to thank for going first and taking some of the heat away from us. It was awesome. But yeah, I mean, even that kind of seeing how they went through the whole process and how the media was and social media and everything else sort of prepped us for going into that next piece.
Question here?
Yeah. So one of the things we didn't talk about was money.
Yeah.
So private equity coming in, AB coming in, probably others. How did that factor into the decision making?
One of the PE firms was higher. So it's not, at the end of the day, that was not the final decision. And they were not a little bit, they were a bit higher. It's, I think you have a range you're going to wind up closing everything within, and it's a satisfactory range. But, it's not highest bidder. There's other factors that are more important, and I think, our staff, our brand, and things that we do become a little bit to the forefront at that point.
Hi, Joe, I'm Danish, so I don't have sort of the American politeness and smooth indirectness. I've been in town for a couple of days, and I've been in Seattle also last week, and I've heard a nasty rumor on the street, and I think you ought to comment upon it.
What's that?
Being that in the final parts of the process, Dick Cantwell actually managed to get an offer from New Belgium Brewing Company which matched that of AB.
We didn't.
No.
We didn't.
I love rumors.
Yeah. There wasn't.
Hey, just curious, you mentioned expanding your market access or sort of enhancing market access. What about expanding footprint? Like, to what extent did that factor in, or did it? Or
footprint of the plant, or footprint of where we're going to be?
Like
so yeah, I mean, the Las Vegas trip was interesting. I was descended upon because all these Anheuser-Busch distributors were like, "Oh, the new toy, and we want it," and we don't have any beer. We allocate in every market that we're in now, and so it was more. Kind of like I can't go anywhere. So for me, Anheuser-Busch came to me and said, hey, listen, you can expand wherever you want, whenever you want, but you tell us where you want to go, when you want to go, right? We're not going to rush you. I think they felt maybe with Goose they went a little too quick a lot of times. They don't want to make that same mistake. And that was a big piece too, is like seeing that sort of thought process. We all make mistakes. And to understand you made a mistake and take a different tack on the next round is refreshing and good. It's nice because I'm a SKU within Anheuser-Busch now, as opposed to having to register for every state. So we don't have to do paperwork. We file the SKU and we're in. So my parents live in Connecticut, and Connecticut's the worst state in the United States for liquor laws. We would never go in there. We're on the East Coast, but we wouldn't go into the state because once you sign, the wholesaler owns your brand for life. I want my dad to be able to go buy beer at the store around the corner. So I asked them, I said, can I do that? They're like, oh, totally. So we're gonna send it out to just Fairfield, the one town that he's in. And that's kind of awesome, It's a cool thing. It's small, but it's, access to market is on us. And yes, we're making stupid decisions like that along the way.
Wow.
Chicago's on the radar, too. We got some, I know.
So we got time for one more question.
So I'm just curious, what new innovations are you working on?
So, like a couple of things hit, like one of which was, they've got a hop farm. We could plant varietals. What do you want to plant? Good. Now I can't sleep for frickin' weeks because I can't figure out what the hell we want to drop in the ground. If somebody asked you, what do you want to plant? It's going to take 24 months for the rhizomes to hit. And what are you going to need in 24 months? What do you want in 24 months? What's kind of cool? That's horrible. It's the worst question you could be asked. Love the opportunity, but Jesus. So we have access to a lot of raw materials. We want to go barrel aging. I bought 10 tequila barrels today for, I don't know what yet, but we're going to do something with them. I think also I'm a little mindful of, Goose is doing their barrel aging program. If we do something, I'm going to do something different. So it doesn't cannibalize. 10 Barrel does their thing. I want to do something different. I want to do our own thing and let everybody think should do their own piece. I think the integration of each brewery doing their own kind of portfolio of stuff that's their own deal is cool. So, we've been a little seat of the pants brewing. I want to continue that. Sours I always love, so I love going down that road. IPAs we kind of love. We just did Steve Luke, one of our brewers, who's opening up a new place in Seattle. He's opening up his own brewery, and if you go to Seattle, we'll be open in a couple of months. You got to go check him out. The guy's awesome. I asked him to brew a beer for Pike Place Market, and it was going to be for an anniversary fundraiser that they do. And I said, I want you to go down there, get ingredients that are from the market to make the beer. So he went in on his own, and he came out of it, and he had did a blonde ale body. He did apricot, fresh mint, long chilies, and for aromatics, he did a bouquet of fresh flowers about that big. Throws them in the mash tun, and it looked gorgeous. It was awesome. And it's like, are those edible? Look them up on Google quick. They're all fine. They're all fine. The oils made it through the whole process. They came out. Everything was balanced, wonderful. It's like trying to do some of those things. I want to go outside where the usual suspects are. I think it's what we've gone there in the past. We want to continue doing that in the future.
How long do you think you'll have that freedom to do that?
That's what we're here for. That's not something they're giving us. It's something they're expecting of us. It's a different tack.
Are you going to still keep making that pumpkin peach beer or what?
Absolutely. I got one last.
I had to fucking ask it, right? Jesus.
I got one last thing. All right. So yes, we had right after we did the announcement, and then the Super Bowl was the next week, and then that following Monday, we had Carlos Brito, Marcel Terres, one of the board members, a couple other board members. Joel was the head of Anheuser-Busch North America. Felipe was out there. It's everybody at ABI, top down, walking through Elysian. And the morning, I was kind of looking at our inventory sheet, and we had 1 6-barrel of peach pumpkin ale left. I have a 1947 Sub-Zero freezer. I converted it into a kegerator. I put the keg of peach pumpkin ale on. I'm walking back. We went through the whole plant. Everybody's talking with him, asking Carlos questions. I'm walking with Carlos back towards the front, and I'm like, I want you to try a beer I got on tap, man. It's pretty good. He goes, oh, fantastic. What is it? I go, it's a peach pumpkin ale. And he absolutely grabbed everybody. They ran over. Tasted it, they were trying it. They all got together, posed for a picture in front of it, and he turns to me on his camera phone and he goes, I'm sending this to the Bud guys. So it was good, and I look at it more like we've taken a lot of snipes at Bud over the years, rightfully so. And so they took a snipe at us. Big deal. We're all in the same industry, we do the same thing. It's sibling rivalry.
Okay.
I do think we're better than them, Don. I'm going to prove that. And we did make Golden Suds, which is Budweiser. We made our own version of Bud at the brewery, too, so it was fun. And we have latitude to have fun like that.
Right.
And we have latitude to poke fun at them, and they have latitude to poke fun at us. I think it should be, the same.
Well, maybe they'll keep poking fun at you.
Nah, yeah, don't worry about that.
Awesome.
Thanks, Ben.
Round of applause for Joe. So I know everybody probably needs to refill their glasses and get a beer, and then we'll call up our next panel. But before we do that, we do have a special guest up here. This is the man of the hour, actually, Chad. He is from the Cancer Research Institute, and he's going to say a couple words about why you guys all donated tonight.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you for 10 Barrel for having us. Thank you so much for Brew Talks for having us. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the Night Cancer Institute or the Night Cancer Challenge, but in September 2013, Phil Knight announced that he was going to donate $500 million if we could raise $500 million within 2 years. We're now 16 months in. We've raised $463 million. We have $37 million left to raise. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. We really couldn't do it without the entire community. So many organizations have grouped together to raise funds for us. So thank you so much. Have a great night. If you have any questions, please come and find me.
Wow, thank you. Cheers, man. $2,400 seems like a drop in the bucket now. Let's go get a beer, and then we'll come back in about 5 or 10 minutes for the next panel.